Yahoo Fantasy Football Week 6 is completed in the NFL season and the Tucson Tackle Dummies League. We're going to go ahead and take you on a quick take through the league, talk about what happened in Week 6 action. Let's get right to the games. The closest game of the week, your Bush's Baked Beans game of the week. The Pain Trains knocks off my Dirty Boys 111-48 to 98-64. Pain Trains now 4-2 in the league and takes the division lead in the Toro division. And this team is the only team that's undefeated through 3 games of intra-divisional play. Pain Trains is also now 4-0 when scoring over 100 points and 0-2 when not. Dirty Boys falls to 1-5 and is the worst team in the league, is last overall, 15th in overall scoring. Lone win came against Bucknuts in a forfeit. And Dirty, unfortunately, is the second least scored on team, so this team should be squeaking out more victories than it is, and sits 1-5 and dead last. Dirty outscored Pain by almost 20 points on offense, but lost due to a busted defense. Dirty won the quarterback battle with Alex Smith outscoring Eli Manning 15.64 to 14.98. Dirty had a team-high 16.2 from wide receiver Brandon Marshall, and then won the tight end battle in a landslide as Tony Gonzalez outscored Tony Moeki 14.65 to 2.6. Dirty had 5 offensive players beat projections when all was said and done. For Pain Trains, though, 3 offensive players beat projections, a game-high 17.35 from running back Steven Jackson. Pain also had 11.7 from 2 wide receivers, which didn't help the cause. Both wide receivers scoring pretty low this week. Pain, though, came back with a very good performance on defense. Had 12 points from Eric Weddle and 10 points from DeJuan Landry, combining for 22 points from the defensive back slot. Dirty Boys had a total of 12 points on defense combined from all players. Dirty started 2 individual defensive players on a bye, and 2 more were inactive. The San Francisco defense collected 10 of the 12 points for Dirty this week as Dirty gets routed on the defensive side of the ball, allowing Pain to pick up the victory. Also in action, Sixburg continues their improbable run to 5-1 overall after knocking off AZ Chargers 84.14 to 68.62. Sixburg, as we mentioned, 5-1 and leads the division, the Aztec division, by 2 games. But this was also the first time Sixburg scored under 100 points this year, despite having an injured quarterback since Week 1 that has not played since Week 1. Sixburg is also, we do have to note, the least scored on team in the league. So teams are not scoring when they're playing Sixburg, which is really unfortunate considering the state of Sixburg's lineup. AZ Chargers now sits 3-3 and is the lowest. This week they posted the lowest score that this team has ever posted, scoring just 68.62 points. Sixburg, as we mentioned, still starting the injured Matthew Stafford. Not going to have Stafford next week, but Stafford will return in 2 weeks, so if Berg doesn't change that lineup, Berg is actually going to get their quarterback back and actually run through without having a quarterback with a very impressive record. Sixburg also started Cedric Benson on a bye, got 0 points from Visante Shenko, and still outscored the Chargers offense when all was said and done. Sixburg had a game-high 29.65 from Jeremy Maclin. He benefited from the Deshaun Jackson injury in the Eagles game, and Berg also picked up 14.9 from Frank Gore. For AZ Chargers, the lone player on the entire team to beat projections this week was Lance Moore with 12.2. The team went with 2 San Diego Charger running backs, and both of them fell below projections. AZ Chargers also went with Greg Olsen at tight end for 0 points and had a team-high 12.96 from quarterback Josh Freeman from Tampa. Unfortunately, AZ Chargers sat Kolb with 25.14 and Deion Branch with 18.05. So 2 big scores there would have given Chargers the win had they been started. Both teams had a 0 in the tight end slot. Neither team performed very well at all this week. Chargers did, though, get 2.65 points from Rob Gronkowski, putting that tight end in the flex position. The defenses on both sides were very impressive this week. The highest scoring defensive player from both teams was Troy Polamalu with just 5.5. In other action, DM2 Carp continues their winning ways, knocking off Delicious Pancakes 132.32 to 116.66. Carp is now 4-2 and just a game out of first in the Caballero division. Pancakes continues to lead the Wildcat division at 3-3, but is now in a 3-way tie and has remained there despite losing 2 straight. Carp finished with 6 players beating projections. An excellent day on offense. Had a game-high 21.8 from Andre Johnson, 46.6 points from 3 wide receivers, and then Chris Ivory with 17.75 points, beating projections by almost 13 points for the New Orleans Saints. Pancakes had a team-high 19.9 from Joe Flacco at quarterback, and also had 19.2 from LaDainian Tomlinson, but then had very disappointing days from Donald Driver with just 3.85 points, and Maurice Jones-Drew scoring just 7, well below projections for him. Pancakes, the big difference here, losing Antonio Gates. Scored just 1.7 this week. Gates got injured. Pancakes came into this week being the top scoring team at the tight end position, and is now probably going to lose Gates for at least a week. We'll see how the injury plays out throughout the week, though. Both teams on the defensive side had bright spots at linebacker, though. Carp had 12.5 points from DJ Williams, and Pancakes had 18.5 at linebacker from Lawrence Timmons of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Also in action, Polax knocked off Greek Thunderball 95.99 to 77.58. Polax now sits at 3-3, but is 2 games out of the division lead because of Sixburg running away with things. Polax is 3-0 when their opponents score under 100, and 0-3 when their opponents go over 100 points. Greek, same story there, sits 3-3, 1 game out of first in the Toro division, is 0-3 when their opponents go 90 or higher, but is 3-0 when the opponents score under 90. Both lineups were filled with holes this week. Polax made the best of that situation, though, and wound up walking away the victor. Polax started 2 players on a bye, 1 injured and 1 more that scored no points. Only 3 players beat projections for Polax, and at running back, just 14.8 points from 3 running backs. All of those points coming from Ahmad Bradshaw, as the other 2 running backs scored 0. Polax also had a game-high 24.3 from wide receiver Dwayne Bowe. For Greek, 3 players were on a bye this week. 5 active players scored 2 points or less. Steve Slayton at running back scored just 0.76. The defensive linemen for Greek, both linemen combined for just 2.5. And at linebacker, Spencer Larson scored just 0.1 for Greek. Greek had a team-high 22.92 from Aaron Rodgers. And the 2 tight end set continues to be successful. 18.95 points at tight end from both tight ends this week combined. But on defense, just 9.1 points total for Greek on defense. Polax picked up 10 points alone from Antrell Roll. Also in action, Jam Toe knocked off Is This the CFL? 138.12 to 107.54. Toe, 5-1, is the league's top team, is #1 in scoring, and is also the 2nd most scored on team in the league. So a very impressive record for Toe. CFL sits 2-4 with the loss, is last in the Wildcat division, but only a game out of first. CFL, the only team besides Bucknuts without an intra-division win, has lost 3 straight since we left divisional play. CFL had 419.79 points in the first 3 weeks of play. The last 3 weeks, though, CFL has only scored 295.85. That's a difference of almost 120 points from first 3 weeks to the last 3 weeks. Toe had a game-high 21.72 from Drew Brees. Also chipped in 15.55 from Roy Williams at wide receiver. CFL had a team-high 14.35 from Adrian Peterson. The 2 tight end set was successful as well for CFL, with Todd Heap and Brandon Pettigrew combining for 19.5. But the big difference here was probably the fact that CFL had Phillip Rivers at quarterback, and Phillip Rivers fell below projections despite playing the Rams. A very disappointing performance from Phillip Rivers. Defense, though, was a blowout in favor of Jam Toe. Won the defensive battle by 21 points. Toe had the Tennessee defense for 17 points this week. CFL started the Kansas City defense and got -2. And Toe also won the defensive lineman battle with 2 defensive linemen combining for 17 points versus CFL's 3.5. Also in action, Big Ben's Revenge knocked off Shots 126.78 to 82.8. Big Ben finishes 3-3, or is now 3-3 overall, tied for the division lead. Is 3-0 when the opponents score under 100, but 0-3 when opponents go over 100 points. Shots is now 2-4. This week was the lowest score in team history for that squad. Only the 2nd time in team history that team has scored under 100 points. Big Ben had 8 players beat projections, 7 players in double digits. Shots had just 2 beat projections and only 1 player in double digits this week. That proved to be the big difference here. Big Ben Team high 15.3 from Matt Ryan. Also had Percy Harvin for 13.33. That helped to cover the fact that Miles Austin had just 1.7. And then at running back for Big Ben, Jamal Charles chipped in 12.7, covering the fact that Michael Turner had a disappointing 5.15. Shots had 23 points from Tony Romo this week. The rest of the offense, though, managed just 32.3 points. The second highest scoring offensive player was the kicker, David Akers, with 7 points. 6.2 points from both running backs combined. A combined 9.55 from 2 wide receivers, and an additional 9.55 from 2 tight ends. So nobody performed well on the offensive side for shots. On defense, Big Ben dominated this one, 49.5 to 27.5. Big Ben had Curtis Lofton at linebacker for 12.5 points. Shots at defensive back was projected to score 23.55, scored just 8 from the 2 defensive backs they started. The highest scoring team of the week, Inglorious Bear Jew, scored 163.23 points in defeating Herbie TG, 163.23 to 93.78. Bear Jew is now 3-3 and tied for the division lead. Was high scorer of the week, as we mentioned, is now just one of 3 teams that have a winning streak after Week 6 play. And in the last 2 weeks has outscored their opponents by almost 140 points, 336.41 to 197.21 in the last 2 weeks of play. Herbie is now 2-4 and is the most scored on team in the league, which is always going to be hard to overcome. Bear Jew had 10 players beat projections, 7 players in double digits. 3 players went over 20 points, including a game-high 23.15 from Ryan Terrain. Also 37.75 from 2 running backs combined. Bear Jew had Ben Roethlisberger in at quarterback this week as Roethlisberger returned from suspension and picked up 21.78 points from Roethlisberger. Also a big surprise, Greg Jennings has finally busted out with 20.8 points this week. Was the first Green Bay Packer of the season to go over 100 yards receiving on a team that was supposed to be extremely potent on offense. So Bear Jew very happy to see that, I'm sure. Herbie had just 4 players beat projections this week. 2 players in the lineup were on a bye, and 3 players scored 1 point or less. Herbie had a team-high 19.6 out of Chris Johnson. 2 Bears at wide receiver combined for 24.21, so that actually wound up working for Herbie. But Bear Jew then dominated the defensive side of things, 50 to 12.5. The defensive backs for Bear Jew combined for 19.5 points in this contest. And in the final contest of the week, Diabetes knocks off Bucknuts 140.55 to 48.39. Diabetes is now 2-4 with the win, scores nearly 100 points higher than they did last week, was the second highest score of the week. Bucknuts is now 3-3, unable to set the lineup with just less than 24 hours notice after switching ownership. So can't fault Bucknuts for the loss here, as a new owner took over and had less than 24 hours to react and get the lineup in order. Diabetes had 7 players in double digits, had a game-high 21.85 from the questionable Calvin Johnson, who almost didn't even play, and then also 18.3 points from the injured Pierre Garcon, who also almost did not play this week. And then at running back had a combined 33.45 from 2 running backs. Bucknuts only had 6 players in the actual lineup. One of those was on a bye, but did have a team-high 18.18 from Peyton Manning. If we break down the divisions now, looking ahead to Week 7, the Wildcat division is currently led by Delicious Pancakes at 3-3, but 2 other teams, Bear Jew and Big Ben, are tied with Pancakes, and then CFL is just 1 game out, so that division very close. In the Caballero division, Jam Toe leads that one with a 5-1 record, just 1 game up, though, on DM2 Carp, but the Toe now has a 3-game lead on Shots and Herbie TG. In the Aztec division, Sixburg is 5-1 with a 2-game lead on Polax. And then you have the league's 2 worst teams, Diabetes and Dirty Boys, sitting at the bottom in that division. And in the Toro division, you've got Pain Trains with a 1-game lead on the other 3 teams in that division. Looking ahead to Week 7, it's a very important week as 3 matchups will pit teams against each other that are currently in the top 8, as number 1 Jam Toe will take on number 6 Bear Jew. Number 2 Sixburg is going to face off with number 8 Greek Thunderball. And number 5 Carp is going to take on number 7 Big Ben. Also in action, Polax at number 10 is going to face off with number 11 Bucknuts. Number 12 CFL is going to take on number 13 Shots. So a couple of important matchups there for teams in the middle of things. And then a couple of lopsided games we're looking here at number 3 Pain Trains taking on number 15 Diabetes. Number 4, Pancakes will face off with number 14, Herbie. And number 9, AZ Chargers will face off with bottom feeder, My Dirty Boys. So we'll hope to see you back next week for Week 7 action in the Tucson Tackle Dummies League. This is Eric signing out.